A very good afternoon to all the people who showed up. I came in at about 2 o'clock, and I was worried that it will only just be the 4 speakers who will be attending the event. Actually, a very good point by Alvin. He spoke about how things are labeled as alternative. So just to give you some statistics, we started in 2013, the Independent. I started it with the former editor of Today paper. And the whole idea was that the mainstream media wasn't covering enough about what was happening in and around the art space with the opposition politics or the political movement. That was also about the time when Gilbert actually staged the largest protest. And we found that some of the reporting was a bit skewed, and there was a need for an alternate medium. But we're also struggling with the same term, alternate media. Yesterday, Today paper reported something and called us alternative news site. We've become the largest alternate news sites. But in terms of ranking, Straits Times has 23 million page views, Channel News Asia about 24 million. Us, Independent, and we also syndicate our news across various platforms. We're doing close to about 10 million, which brings us at about the 3rd rank in Singapore, far larger than the others. I've got a written script because if I go off script, I might get into trouble. So I will stick to this. So a couple of things. One is when Gilbert said that he was going to conduct a workshop on Protest 101, let me tell you this, I'm not going to offer any wisdom here. Living under authoritarian regime, all I know is how authoritarianism works. So if you want to know how to organize a protest, he's the go-to man, and please go to him. Today I will talk about online activism. In 2012, I was also the chief editor of the Online Citizen. And at about that time, we experienced the Arab Spring. So I went around to a lot of talks, workshops. They were talking about how social media was actually a great tool for democracies, because at that point in time, we witnessed Arab Spring, and they overthrew a dictator, Hosni Mubarak. And we could feel that the powers, and I was invited to a lot of closed-door dialogue with the ministers. They were concerned that there might be another Arab Spring in Singapore, right? So that was in 2011, today is 2019. And what has happened in the last 8-9 years is the government has, has improved their standing. Straits Times back then was ranked at about 60 in terms of ranking of websites in Singapore. Today they are ranked, I think, 11 or 13. So they have improved their ranking. Channel News Asia has improved their online space, digital space. There was another website called Temasek Review, which was shut down. And after that, they were in top 30 back then. The Real Singapore was shut down. They were also in the top 30. And so over the years, we found that alternate news sites have been shut down by the government. So going back to the online activism, so the government was also clamping down on online vigilantes. So if you operated an account without a proper identity, the government was going after the big giants for this. Okay, so how does that affect us, right? So as a media operator, what we did over the last couple of years was how to manage a government that is actually coming after us. So in Singapore, there is the IMDA regulation, which is formerly the MDA regulation, which imposes restrictions on local websites. Anybody who wants to comment on political news, there is a Form C that you need to fill up. Basically, there's a declaration, a statutory declaration, which you need to make to say that you will not solicit funds, you will not pick up money from any foreigners. Okay? There are several exceptions to that. One is you can actually work with a foreign advertiser. Because if you look at the advertising industry, it's monopolized by, there's a duopoly, actually, with Google and Facebook. And then there are a whole bunch of smaller operators. So the government actually makes an exception that you can only do business with legitimate advertisers. I cannot pick up money from other political parties, other government agencies, and so on. But we've also challenged the government on several aspects, saying that if you are a commercial entity, for example, the Independent was incorporated as a company, putting such restrictions on us is actually restricting our freedom to operate a business in Singapore. So basically the IMDA came back, or MDA back then in 2013 came back and said, yes, as a company you can do business with foreigners, we're not stopping you from doing business. But as a website, you cannot do business with foreigners. You cannot have pick up funding from foreigners. So why I'm bringing this up is I've seen this thing play out over the years, right? Over and again. There's a kind of a dichotomy there because they're kind of double standards. Recently, if you look at the story of, if you've been following the narrative around there's a new website called New Narrative, N-A-R-A-T-I-F. T-I-F. The other one is narrative as in the full word right now. The New Narrative, they picked up funding from Open Society, I think to the tune of $100,000. And basically there was a witch hunt. The government went after the owners, PJ Tham and Kirsten Hunt, primarily the two of them. They went on a witch hunt, named and shamed these individuals, basically called them traitors, dissidents, etc. So my point is simple, right? If we are a commercial hub, and Singapore wants to be a commercial hub, we should be given the freedom to do business. The irony of it is you have companies like Yahoo, which does a lot of local reporting. I've attended a lot of political events in Singapore. And Yahoo reporters actually go on the ground and actually do political reporting as well. So there's a bit, AFP is on the ground, AP is on the ground, Reuters is on the ground. So you have international media companies on one hand, they're foreign funded, and they're allowed to operate, whereas new media startups face severe restrictions. Not only that, okay. Not only that, so I feel odd with him actually fiddling around my collar like this. Not only that, right? So the founders of these young startups are also demonized by a whole bunch of what they call the internet brigade these days. We don't know if those people actually exist. So that's one of the main problems here. So actually, I also want to talk a bit more about POFMA in Singapore, right? I actually submitted to the select committee actually on POFMA, and basically what I said was and we went back and we looked at the historical basis of how they shut down TRS. It was based on the sedition laws and the telecommunication laws. Telecommunication laws is a very old law. You can't use that. Sedition law is not appropriate to deal with online falsehoods, right? So we say, yes, there's probably a need to update the laws. And we looked at the model that UK implemented. The UK's model was a form of self-regulation. That means you get media operators together. Media operators will then decide on what should stay and what should go down, right? What should be taken down. We suggested that that's probably the best way to govern and moderate and regulate the industry. But to our surprise, actually the government had actually a whole, I think, was it 2 weeks or a week long of, they invited people into the parliament and they all gave their little talk and speeches. And the outcome was that the minister, the domain minister becomes the final arbiter of what should be taken down. And this is my beef with them, right? I said, look, if I'm writing something about, for example, the trade union and how the trade union in Singapore has built several commercial entities, and these entities have actually put contracts that may infringe worker rights. And if I'm going to write about that, first, I'm going to go and talk to the worker. I'll get his side of the story. The government expects me to go back to the union and get their version of the story. And what are they going to say? They say, hey, look, we are right. And if you don't put our version of the story out, we're going to classify this as fake news and we're going to force you to take down. So that actually limits the range of topics that we can actually publish and write on. It essentially says that whistleblowers, if you got something to say, use your back channels, just like what Alvin was trying to narrate earlier. Use the back channels, and we have got all these go-betweens. Is that a zero or something? Okay, I've run out of time. But use the back channels, and then you can communicate with us. The couple of things that I like to conclude on is what the government really needs to do is look at safe spaces for people to come forward and address grievances or even make critical comments. I think Professor Tomiko said something along those lines just recently. There's a dire need for that. And if I can quote Alan Greenspan actually said that a good media is like a safety valve in a society because we bring issues to the fore, we're able to discuss things, and before things really go out of hand and it goes off on the street and becomes a street protest. Actually, my final take, because I've run out of time, I didn't really stick to the script, is these are things that the government should look at and look at creating safe spaces. We should be having larger and bigger workshops like this. And I'd like to thank Gilbert, and I'd like to thank you all. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much.